Sarah Chun had always been fascinated by airplanes. As a young girl growing up in a small farming town in Nebraska, she would spend hours lying in the wheat fields, watching military jets streak across the endless blue sky. Her father, a corn farmer with calloused hands and a practical mind, would shake his head whenever he found her there. "Sarah, those planes aren't for girls like us," he would say gently, pulling her to her feet. "Come help your mother with dinner." But Sarah's dreams refused to be grounded by convention. While her classmates played with dolls or gossiped about boys, she built model airplanes in her bedroom, carefully painting each tiny detail with the precision of a master craftsman. Her bedroom walls were covered with posters of fighter jets, commercial airliners, and vintage warboats. She memorized specifications, studied aerodynamics, and devoured every aviation magazine she could find at the town's small library. The first day at the Air Force Academy shattered every expectation Sarah had carefully built in her mind. Within minutes of arriving, she and hundreds of other incoming cadets were thrust into a whirlwind of shouting instructors, rapid-fire commands, and physical demands that pushed her Nebraska farm girl strength to its absolute limits. The upperclassmen, known as cadre, seemed to take particular interest in breaking down anyone who showed the slightest hint of weakness or hesitation. Fighter pilot training at Luke Air Force Base in Arizona proved to be everything Colonel Martinez had warned Sarah about and more. The desert heat was oppressive, the training schedule was relentless, and the pressure to perform at the absolute highest level never ceased. From the moment she arrived, Sarah understood that she was competing not just for a spot in an elite fighter squadron, but for the respect and acceptance of a community that had historically excluded women. The T-38 Talon trainer aircraft that began her fighter training was a significant step up from anything Sarah had flown at the academy. The twin-engine jet was faster, more complex, and far less forgiving of mistakes than the docile trainers she had mastered in Colorado. Her first flight in the T-38 was both exhilarating and terrifying as she experienced the raw power and responsiveness that would prepare her for frontline fighter aircraft. Her flight instructor at Luke was Major Patricia Hawk Williamson, one of only a handful of female fighter pilots in the Air Force and a veteran of combat operations in the Middle East. Major Williamson had fought her own battles against skepticism and discrimination, and she was determined to prepare Sarah for the challenges that lay ahead. "Chun, flying the jet is only part of being a fighter pilot," Major Williamson explained during a briefing session. "You need to think faster, react quicker, and make decisions under pressure that would paralyze most people. The enemy won't care about your gender, your background, or your feelings. They only care about shooting you down." The combat training scenarios were unlike anything Sarah had experienced. High-speed intercept missions, air-to-air combat simulations, and precision bombing runs pushed her skills and her aircraft to their limits. Sarah discovered that her natural flying ability, honed through years of dedicated practice, gave her advantages that even surprised her instructors. During one particularly challenging exercise, Sarah was tasked with a simulated combat air patrol mission in which she had to defend a strategic target against multiple enemy aircraft. The scenario was designed to overwhelm student pilots, but Sarah's quick thinking and aggressive tactics allowed her to successfully engage all targets while protecting her assigned objective. "Outstanding performance," Chun radioed the exercise controller after she landed. "Your situational awareness and tactical decision-making were textbook perfect." But success in training brought new forms of scrutiny. Some of her male classmates began to question whether Sarah was receiving preferential treatment or easier mission assignments. The whispers followed her through the base dining hall, the pilot-ready room, and even into informal gatherings where pilots traditionally bonded over shared experiences and war stories. Lieutenant Brad Morrison, a cocky pilot from California whose father had flown F-4 Phantoms in Vietnam, was particularly vocal in his skepticism. "I'm not saying she's not a good pilot," he told a group of classmates within earshot of Sarah. "I'm just saying that when the shooting starts for real, you want someone next to you who doesn't have anything to prove." Sarah overheard the comment, but chose not to respond directly. Instead, she let her performance speak for itself, consistently scoring at the top of her class in every phase of training. Her weapons delivery accuracy was exceptional, her formation flying was precise, and her emergency procedures handling was flawless. The defining moment of her training came during a complex night combat exercise involving multiple aircraft and simulated surface-to-air missile threats. Sarah was leading a two-ship formation tasked with penetrating heavily defended airspace to strike a high-value target. The mission required precise timing, exceptional flying skills, and the ability to make split-second decisions in a high-threat environment. As Sarah's formation approached the target area, her wingman, Lieutenant Martinez from New Mexico, experienced a sudden aircraft malfunction that left him vulnerable and disoriented. The safe protocol would have been to abort the mission and return to base immediately, but the exercise parameters indicated that the target was time-critical and represented a strategic objective that couldn't be delayed. Sarah had to make an instant decision: follow standard safety procedures and abort, or find a way to protect her wingman while completing the mission. Drawing on every lesson she had learned about leadership, tactics, and flying, she chose a third option that required exceptional skill and significant risk. "Martinez, stay close to me and follow my lead," she radioed to her struggling wingman. "We're going to complete this mission together." Sarah modified her attack approach to provide cover for Martinez while still maintaining the element of surprise necessary for mission success. She used terrain masking and electronic countermeasures to shield both aircraft from the simulated missile threats, executed a precision strike on the target, and guided both aircraft safely back to base. The debriefing session that followed was attended by senior officers who had been monitoring the exercise. Colonel Thompson, the wing commander, reviewed Sarah's tactical decisions with obvious admiration. "Lieutenant Chun, your performance tonight demonstrated the kind of leadership and flying ability that defines our best combat pilots," he announced to the assembled group. "Your decision to protect your wingman while completing the mission showed exceptional judgment under pressure." The recognition was gratifying, but Sarah was more pleased by the change in attitude she observed among her classmates. Lieutenant Morrison approached her after the debriefing with a different expression than she had seen from him before. "Chun, I owe you an apology," he said, extending his hand. "What you did tonight was exceptional flying and leadership. I'd be honored to fly as your wingman anytime." As Sarah progressed through the final phases of fighter pilot training, her assignment to an operational squadron became the subject of intense speculation. The Air Force was in the process of deploying squadrons to support combat operations in the Middle East, and the most promising graduates would be assigned to units that were likely to see combat action. The assignment notification came on a Friday afternoon that Sarah would never forget. She was called to the wing commander's office, where Colonel Thompson waited with news that would define her career. "Lieutenant Chun, congratulations," he said, handing her a folder containing her assignment orders. "You're being assigned to the 421st Fighter Squadron, the Black Widows, flying F-16C Fighting Falcons. They're deploying to Balad Air Base in Iraq in 6 months, and they requested you specifically based on your training performance." Sarah's hands trembled slightly as she read the orders. The Black Widows were one of the Air Force's most respected fighter squadrons, with a history dating back to World War II and a reputation for excellence in combat operations. Being selected for the unit was an honor that few pilots ever achieved, regardless of gender. The 6 months of preparation for deployment passed quickly. Sarah completed advanced weapons training, survival school, and cultural preparation for operations in the Middle East. She also underwent intensive physical and psychological preparation for combat, including scenarios designed to prepare pilots for the possibility of being shot down behind enemy lines. During one particularly grueling survival exercise in the Nevada desert, Sarah spent 3 days evading simulated enemy forces with minimal food and water. The experience was exhausting and challenging, but it built confidence in her ability to handle the unexpected dangers of combat operations. Her deployment to Iraq marked the beginning of the most challenging and rewarding period of her military career. Balad Air Base was a massive coalition facility supporting thousands of military personnel from multiple countries. The operational tempo was intense, with fighter aircraft conducting multiple missions daily in support of ground forces and strategic objectives throughout the region. Sarah's first combat mission was a close air support flight protecting American ground forces engaged with insurgent fighters in a contested area near Baghdad. As she flew over the Iraqi landscape, Sarah felt the weight of responsibility that came with carrying live weapons and defending the lives of fellow service members on the ground. The mission was successful, with Sarah providing precise air support that helped ground forces complete their objective with minimal casualties. But the experience also brought home the serious nature of combat operations and the life and death decisions that fighter pilots must make in real time. Over the following months, Sarah flew dozens of combat missions, ranging from strategic strikes against enemy facilities to complex air-to-air operations protecting coalition aircraft from enemy fighters. Her performance was consistently exceptional, earning her recognition as one of the squadron's most reliable and skilled pilots. The mission that would define her legacy came during her 8th month in Iraq, when intelligence identified a high-value enemy target in a heavily defended compound near the Syrian border. The target was a senior insurgent leader responsible for coordinating attacks against coalition forces throughout the region. The mission was assigned to Sarah and 3 other pilots, with Sarah designated as the flight lead due to her exceptional performance and leadership abilities. The target was protected by sophisticated air defense systems and was located in an area where enemy fighter aircraft might respond to defend the facility. As Sarah's flight approached the target area, they encountered unexpected resistance. Enemy surface-to-air missiles filled the sky, and intelligence reports indicated that enemy fighters were scrambling to intercept the American aircraft. The tactical situation was rapidly becoming more complex and dangerous than anticipated. During the attack run, Sarah's wingman suffered a direct hit from enemy ground fire that severely damaged his aircraft. Lieutenant Rodriguez, the pilot she had trained alongside for months, radioed that he was losing control and might need to eject over enemy territory. Sarah faced the most critical decision of her military career. The primary mission was strategically important and time-sensitive. Aborting would allow a dangerous enemy leader to escape and potentially cost American lives in future attacks. But abandoning a fellow pilot in distress violated every principle of military brotherhood and personal honor that Sarah held sacred. Without hesitation, Sarah made her choice. She ordered the other 2 aircraft to continue with the primary mission while she stayed with Rodriguez, providing air cover and guidance as he attempted to reach friendly territory with his damaged aircraft. The next 20 minutes tested every skill Sarah had developed throughout her career. She guided Rodriguez through emergency procedures while simultaneously defending against enemy fighters that had arrived to exploit the situation. Her tactical flying and weapons employment were flawless as she engaged multiple enemy aircraft while protecting her wounded wingman. Sarah successfully guided Rodriguez to a safe landing at a forward coalition airbase, saving his life and preventing his capture by enemy forces. Her decisive leadership and exceptional flying ability under the most demanding circumstances earned her recognition as one of the Air Force's most distinguished combat pilots. The medal ceremony held 6 months later at Nellis Air Force Base in Nevada was attended by senior Air Force leadership, her squadron mates, and her family from Nebraska. As she stood at attention while the Distinguished Flying Cross was pinned to her uniform, Sarah reflected on the incredible journey that had brought her to this moment. Her father, now wearing a suit instead of farming clothes but still carrying himself with the quiet dignity of a man who understood hard work and achievement, wiped tears from his eyes as he watched his daughter receive one of the military's highest honors for airmanship and combat leadership. The small-town girl who had been told that flying wasn't for people like her had become one of the Air Force's most decorated combat pilots. But, more importantly, she had opened doors for countless other women who shared her dreams of flight and service. The farm fields of Nebraska had produced a warrior who had proven that courage, skill, and determination knew no gender boundaries. As Sarah looked out at the audience, she saw faces representing every stage of her journey. Academy classmates who had supported her through the most challenging training, flight instructors who had believed in her potential, and squadron mates who had flown beside her in combat. But, most importantly, she saw the face of her mother, whose unwavering faith had sustained her through every obstacle and every moment of doubt. The girl who had once built model airplanes in her bedroom had become the woman who dominated the skies and saved those who needed her most. Her story had become proof that with enough determination, any dream could take flight. "Chun," barked Cadet Captain Rodriguez, a third-year student whose voice could cut through steel. "You think this is summer camp? Drop and give me 20 push-ups now." Sarah hit the ground without hesitation, her months of preparation serving her well as she completed the exercise flawlessly. Around her, other new cadets struggled with the sudden intensity, but Sarah's farm-bred work ethic and her relentless pre-academy training kept her moving when others faltered. She had prepared for this moment for years, and she wasn't about to let anyone break her spirit on the first day. The academic workload was more intense than anything Sarah had experienced, even with her exceptional high school preparation. Engineering, mathematics, military history, leadership studies, and foreign language requirements filled every hour of her day. While her classmates from prestigious prep schools seemed to glide through certain subjects, Sarah found herself studying until well past midnight, determined to maintain the excellence that had brought her here. Her roommate, Jennifer Liu from California, came from a military family and seemed naturally adapted to academy life. Jennifer's father was a Navy admiral, and she had grown up understanding military protocol and expectations. "Sarah, you're working too hard," Jennifer observed one night, finding Sarah still hunched over her calculus textbook at 2 in the morning. "You need to find balance, or you'll burn out before Christmas." But Sarah couldn't find balance. She felt the weight of representing not just herself, but her entire hometown, and every girl who had been told that aviation wasn't for women. Every stumble felt like a failure that went beyond personal disappointment. When she struggled with advanced physics concepts, she saw the disappointed faces of her high school teachers. When she barely met the minimum requirements during particularly brutal physical training sessions, she heard the voices of those who had questioned whether women belonged in combat roles. The flight training component of the academy curriculum was where Sarah truly began to shine. During her first flight in AT-41 trainer aircraft, something clicked that transcended all her years of dreaming and studying. As the small plane lifted off from the academy's airfield, with the Rocky Mountains stretching endlessly below, Sarah felt a sense of completeness that she had never experienced on the ground. Her flight instructor, Captain Morrison, was a veteran pilot with 20 years of experience and a reputation for being particularly demanding with students. "Chun, you're a natural," he told her after her third solo flight, his usually stern expression showing a hint of approval. "Your spatial awareness and aircraft handling are exceptional. Keep this up, and you'll be competitive for the most advanced aircraft in the Air Force inventory." The praise meant everything to Sarah, but it also brought new challenges. Some of her male classmates began to resent her success, particularly when she consistently outperformed them in flight training exercises. The competition among cadets was intense, and Sarah's excellence in the cockpit made her a target for those who believed women had no place in military aviation. "She's probably getting easier treatment because she's a girl," Sarah overheard Cadet Thompson telling a group of classmates after a particularly challenging navigation exercise where she had scored the highest marks. The instructors don't want to fail someone who's making a political statement. These comments stung deeply, but Sarah used them as motivation to work even harder. She began arriving at flight training sessions early, spending extra time studying aircraft systems and flight procedures. Her dedication paid off when she was selected for advanced aerobatics training, a program reserved for the most promising pilot candidates. The aerobatics training pushed Sarah's skills and physical limits in ways she hadn't imagined possible. Pulling multiple GS during high-speed maneuvers, executing precise formation flights, and mastering complex aerial combat techniques required not just technical skill, but extraordinary physical and mental toughness. Sarah excelled, but the training was exhausting and dangerous. During one particularly challenging exercise, Sarah's closest friend at the academy, Michael Stevens from Texas, was involved in a serious training accident. His T-38 trainer experienced engine failure during a low-altitude maneuver, and although he ejected safely, he suffered serious injuries that ended his pilot training. Sarah visited him in the academy hospital every day, watching a fellow dreamer come to terms with the end of his flying career. "Sarah, you have to promise me something," Michael said during one of her visits. His leg elevated in traction and his face still bruised from the ejection. "Don't let anyone tell you that you don't belong up there. You're one of the best pilots I've ever seen, and gender has nothing to do with it. Fly for both of us now." The accident reinforced the serious nature of their chosen profession, but it also strengthened Sarah's determination. She began to understand that her success wasn't just about personal achievement. She was part of a larger mission to protect and serve others. The responsibility felt both overwhelming and inspiring. As Sarah progressed through her third year at the academy, her reputation as an exceptional pilot began to attract attention from senior officers and academy leadership. Colonel Martinez, the head of the flight training program, called her into his office one afternoon with news that would change her trajectory forever. "Cadet Chun, your performance in the pilot training program has been outstanding," he said, reviewing her file with obvious approval. "I'm recommending you for the fighter pilot track, specifically for F-16 Fighting Falcon training after graduation. This is one of the most competitive assignments in the Air Force, and very few academy graduates are selected directly for fighter aircraft." Sarah felt her heart racing as she processed the information. Fighter pilot training represented the pinnacle of military aviation, the dream she had harbored since childhood but hardly dared to believe might become reality. "Thank you, sir," she managed to say. "I won't let you down." "I know you won't," Colonel Martinez replied. "But I want you to understand what you're signing up for. Fighter pilot training is the most demanding program in the military. The washout rate is extremely high, and the physical and mental demands are extraordinary. You'll be one of very few women in the program, and you'll face scrutiny that your male counterparts won't experience." The colonel's words were sobering, but Sarah had been facing scrutiny her entire academy career. She had learned to channel doubt and criticism into motivation, and she was ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. Her final year at the academy passed in a blur of advanced coursework, leadership responsibilities, and preparation for her post-graduation assignment. Sarah was selected as a squadron commander, one of the highest cadet leadership positions, responsible for the discipline and performance of 60 fellow cadets. The position required her to balance compassion with authority, understanding with firmness. One of her most challenging cases involved Cadet Roberts, a talented young man from Virginia who was struggling with the pressure and considering resignation. Sarah spent hours counseling him, drawing on her own experiences of doubt and perseverance to help him find his way forward. "Ma'am, I don't think I'm cut out for this," Roberts confided during one of their sessions. "Everyone else seems so much more natural at this military stuff. I feel like I'm pretending to be something I'm not." Sarah understood his struggle intimately. "Roberts, do you think anyone here is actually natural at this? We're all learning, all adapting, all pushing ourselves beyond what we thought possible. The question isn't whether you're natural at it. The question is whether you're willing to keep growing." Her leadership style, combining high standards with genuine care for her subordinates, earned respect from cadets and officers alike. When graduation day arrived, Sarah stood among the top 5% of her class, with exceptional ratings in academics, military performance, and leadership potential. The graduation ceremony was attended by her parents, who traveled from Nebraska with tears of pride in their eyes. Her father, now graying but still strong, shook her hand with the firm grip of one military member to another. "Lieutenant Chun," he said, using her new rank for the first time, "your mother and I are proud beyond words." Her mother simply hugged her, whispering, "You showed them all what a Nebraska farm girl can do." As Sarah walked across the stage to receive her diploma and commission as a second lieutenant in the United States Air Force, she thought about the long journey from building model airplanes in her childhood bedroom to this moment of triumph. The small-town girl who had been told that flying wasn't for people like her was now headed to one of the most elite pilot training programs in the world. But even as she celebrated this incredible achievement, Sarah knew that her greatest challenges lay ahead. Fighter pilot training would test every skill she had developed, every lesson she had learned, and every ounce of determination she possessed. The young woman who had fought for every opportunity would now have to prove herself worthy of flying the most advanced combat aircraft in the world. Standing in formation with her classmates, the Rocky Mountains towering behind them, and the infinite sky stretching overhead, Lieutenant Sarah Chun was ready to take her dreams to the next level. The farm girl from Nebraska had earned her wings, but her true test was just beginning. Her teachers at Lincoln County High School noticed her exceptional aptitude for mathematics and science. Mrs. Patterson, her physics teacher, was the first adult to take Sarah's aviation dreams seriously. "You know, Sarah," she said after class one day, "the Air Force Academy accepts women now. You have the grades and the drive. You should consider applying." The suggestion seemed impossible to everyone except Sarah herself. No one from their town had ever attended a military academy. Her parents, while loving and supportive, worried about the dangers and the distance. Her father had served briefly in the army during peacetime, but couldn't imagine his daughter in such a demanding environment. "The military is tough, sweetheart," he told her over dinner. "And flying, that's dangerous work." Sarah spent countless nights researching the Air Force Academy, studying the requirements, and preparing for the rigorous application process. She ran 5 miles every morning before school, lifted weights in the school's small gym, and maintained perfect grades despite working part-time at the local diner to save money for college. Her determination was unwavering, but the path forward seemed overwhelming. The first major obstacle came during her junior year when the school's guidance counselor, Mr. Thompson, called her into his office. "Sarah, I've been looking at your college plans," he said, shuffling through papers on his cluttered desk. "I think you need to be more realistic. The Air Force Academy is extremely competitive. Maybe you should consider state schools, perhaps study engineering or teaching." His words stung, but they also fueled her determination. That evening, Sarah sat at her family's kitchen table and wrote her first letter to the Air Force Academy's admissions office, requesting information and application materials. When the thick envelope arrived 2 weeks later, her hands trembled as she opened it. The requirements were daunting: perfect grades, exceptional physical fitness, leadership experience, and congressional nomination. Sarah threw herself into meeting every requirement. She organized a school recycling program, demonstrating leadership and environmental consciousness. She tutored struggling students in math and science, showing her commitment to helping others. She continued her rigorous physical training, often running before dawn and after her part-time job. Her grades remained flawless, but the pressure was intense. The congressional nomination process proved to be particularly challenging. Congressman Bradley's office initially seemed dismissive when Sarah called to request a meeting. His secretary, Mrs. Williams, sounded surprised when Sarah explained her goals. "Are you sure you want to pursue military aviation?" she asked. "That's quite unusual for a young lady from our district." When Sarah finally met with Congressman Bradley, she felt the weight of representing not just herself, but all the girls in her town who had been told their dreams were too big. The congressman, a middle-aged man with silver hair and a kind but skeptical expression, listened politely as Sarah presented her case. She had prepared extensively, bringing her academic transcripts, letters of recommendation, and a detailed presentation about her goals. "Miss Chun," the congressman said after reviewing her materials, "your credentials are impressive, but the competition for academy nominations is fierce. I have many qualified candidates, including several young men whose fathers served with distinction in the military." Sarah felt her heart sink, but refused to show defeat. "Sir, I understand the competition is tough, but I believe my dedication and unique perspective would be valuable to the Air Force. I've spent years preparing for this opportunity, and I'm committed to serving our country with honor." The interview lasted an hour, during which Sarah answered challenging questions about her motivations, her understanding of military service, and her long-term goals. When it ended, Congressman Bradley smiled warmly, but made no commitments. "I'll be in touch with my decision within the month," he said, shaking her hand. The waiting period was agonizing. Sarah continued her training and studies, but doubt crept into her mind during quiet moments. Her best friend, Jessica, tried to be supportive but couldn't hide her skepticism. "Sarah, Maybe you should have backup plans, she suggested one afternoon as they walked home from school. There are other ways to be involved with aviation. You could become an air traffic controller or work for an airline. But Sarah had already invested too much of herself in this dream to consider alternatives seriously. She had written her congressman nomination essay 17 times, perfecting every word. She had endured months of intense physical training, pushing her body to limits she hadn't known existed. She had maintained perfect grades while working 20 hours a week at the diner, serving coffee and burgers to truck drivers and local farmers who couldn't understand why a smart girl like her wanted to fly military jets. The letter from Congressman Bradley's office arrived on a cold Tuesday morning in March. Sarah's mother handed it to her with nervous eyes, and the entire family gathered around the kitchen table as she opened it with shaking hands. The formal language seemed to blur together as she scanned the page, searching for the crucial words that would determine her future. I am pleased to inform you that you have been selected as my nominee to the United States Air Force Academy, she read aloud, her voice barely a whisper. The kitchen erupted in celebration as her parents hugged her and her younger brother cheered. But the nomination was only the beginning. Sarah still had to pass the Academy's own rigorous admissions process, including physical fitness tests, medical examinations, and academic evaluations. The physical fitness requirements were particularly challenging for someone from her small town, where advanced training facilities were non-existent. Sarah improvised, using hay bales for strength training and running hills for endurance. She studied for the academic portions of the entrance exams with an intensity that worried her parents. Her mother often found her asleep at the kitchen table at dawn, textbooks spread around her like fallen leaves. The medical examination required a trip to Denver, her first time in a major city. The experience was overwhelming, from navigating the airport to finding the military medical facility. The doctors were thorough and professional, testing her vision, hearing, cardiovascular fitness, and psychological readiness. Sarah passed every test, but the process was exhausting and intimidating. Throughout this journey, Sarah faced constant reminders that she was pursuing an unconventional path. At the diner where she worked, regular customers often expressed their opinions about women in combat roles. Some were supportive, but others were openly skeptical. "Flying jets isn't women's work," said Earl, a retired mechanic who came in every morning for coffee. "You should find yourself a nice husband and settle down." These comments hurt, but they also strengthened Sarah's resolve. She began to understand that her success would mean more than personal achievement. It would open doors for other young women who shared her dreams. The responsibility felt heavy but also empowering. As graduation approached, Sarah's acceptance to the Air Force Academy became official. The small ceremony at Lincoln County High School felt surreal as she walked across the stage to receive her diploma, knowing that in just a few months, she would be beginning one of the most challenging educational experiences in the country. Her parents struggled with conflicting emotions of pride and fear. Her father had researched the academy extensively and understood the demands Sarah would face. "You're stronger than I ever imagined," he told her the night before she left for Colorado Springs. "But promise me you'll be careful. You're still our little girl." The drive to the Air Force Academy was long and emotional. As they approached the mountains of Colorado, Sarah felt a mixture of excitement and terror. The academy's imposing architecture and pristine grounds were unlike anything she had ever seen. Cadets in crisp uniforms moved with purpose and precision that seemed almost choreographed. When the time came to say goodbye to her parents, Sarah fought back tears. Her mother cried openly, hugging her daughter as if trying to memorize the moment. Her father stood tall, but his eyes were moist as he shook her hand firmly. "Make us proud," he said simply. As Sarah walked through the academy gates for the first time, carrying a single duffel bag containing everything she owned, she felt the weight of her hometown's expectations and the magnitude of her own dreams. Behind her lay a small farming community where people believed in hard work and practical goals. Ahead of her lay 4 years of intense training, academic challenge, and preparation for a career that most people couldn't imagine. She thought about the long journey that had brought her to this moment. The hours spent building model airplanes, the early morning runs through cornfields, the late nights studying for entrance exams, and the countless people who had told her that her dreams were impossible. Now, standing at the threshold of the most prestigious military academy in the world, Sarah Chun from Lincoln County, Nebraska, was ready to prove them all wrong.